As Ali said, my name is Chelsea Matthews. I'm the founder of Matte Black. Oh, do I just? Cool. Yeah, and as she mentioned, we have been working with Pool for a long time in different capacities. Ran the social for many years, amongst other things. So we know how amazing this show is. And it's been an honor to speak at swim lessons the past couple of seasons. So this is such an awesome conference workshop for you guys. I might sound a little out of breath at times. I'm not nervous, although you guys are all looking at me. It's just the additional weight on my lungs. But so at Matte Black, we're a culture marketing firm, and we work with brands in all different industries. But kind of fashion and apparel is something that my background is in for many years before starting my own agency. So very familiar with this space and work with a lot of clients in this space. So we really work with companies on like strategy and social media. We put a lot of time and energy into content. And we do a lot with influencers and kind of all those different consumer channels that you need to kind of tap into your consumer base. For today, I'm going to talk about really crushing your content. I think two of the biggest things that we see companies coming to us for at this point is how to create enough content on a regular basis so that you feel like you're actually creating value and adding something into these social communities that are both very saturated but also very exciting. And then the other is always about growth. How do we get a bigger community? How do we get to 2 million fans? Like all that stuff. And I can definitely speak to those things with any questions at the end, but I wanted to kind of focus on content because I know that it can be both very exciting and very challenging. Creating the right kind of content for your channel takes time and energy and sometimes resources. But there are so many amazing free resources, AKA like apps on your iPhone, that can make creating content that is really good looking pretty easy. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you to follow along. So I'm at Chelsea Matthews. The company is at We Are Matte Black. I should also say that if you guys want to ask any questions or think of anything as I'm saying it, tweet at POOLTRADESHOW, and afterwards I'll look at any of those questions and I'll respond. It's a grind. You guys all know. Are all you guys using social media? Right. You know how much time it can take, and it's really easy to feel a little like, burdened by it at times or really excited by it at times. But hopefully, with kind of a smart content strategy and a game plan, you can feel slightly alleviated by at least knowing that you have the content done, and then you can really focus on the community building. This is a question that doesn't necessarily pertain just to your content, but it's a good thing to think about, which is if there was a brand or a person that would literally just hand you all of their followers, who would it be? And this can be multiple people. The reason it's a good exercise is for a few reasons. One is that it can be very telling in terms of like just purely kind of auditing or observing what they're doing and paying attention to why you like their content or why you think they have a good community, what it is that they're doing well that you'd like to emulate, or maybe things that you think you could do better. And then also, that follower list is an immediate bank of people that you should be engaging with on behalf of your brand. So let's just say, I know a lot of people in this room are at different stages of business, from size or whatever, some one-man teams and some 20, 50 plus teams. But I think that, even if you have an intern, like if you know what brands it is that you would love to take all their followers, the beauty of social media is you technically can if you engage with them in the right way. It's free information. And so it's a great opportunity to give to an intern or someone on your team to say, just go through their follower list. Even if they have like 100,000 followers, just go bit by bit and look at who these people are, understand the demographic and what kind of community they've built, and go in there and engage with them. If you think that they've got great content or they look like someone who would maybe buy your product, that's like the perfect opportunity to go in and comment or like, or just very simple things. You don't have to follow them, but you can they're free people to engage with. I talk a lot about kind of taking a multi-channel approach to brand strategy as a whole, but especially when it comes to marketing and your content, you want to think about it, kind of in a 360 format. These are just a few examples of some of the channels to pay attention to, but social media and email marketing are two things that we pay a lot of attention to. When you're thinking about like any piece of content that you're creating, think about how it could live in an email blast and also be shared across social and potentially on a blog if you have one, and using that from an SEO standpoint. If you're doing any sort of paid marketing, just kind of think about like how you can make it feel a bit more editorial as a whole for your brand as opposed to just a single social post, although there's those too. So these are just a couple of pointers when you're thinking about developing your content strategy. The first thing you want to do is find your why. It sounds kind of obvious, but it can be a good exercise for any brands to really figure out like, why does anyone want to follow me? What am I doing that's different? What am I contributing to the social clutter? That's super important. It's not all about you. So we'll talk a little bit about the 80-20 rule of content, but it shouldn't be all about your brand. It should be about a lot more than that. Lifestyle, other people, customers, retailers, all the people that kind of comprise what makes your brand successful. Insights inspire ideas. So it's also really hard if you don't have like a social agency or a social team to really take the time to understand your analytics. It is important though. It's important to pay attention even just to the simplest stats like your engagement rate, for example. If you notice on Instagram, you might have, let's just say 10,000 followers and you're getting, maybe 75 likes on a post, you would want to calculate what that percentage is. If I was good at mind math, I would tell you, but I need a calculator. But you want to pay attention to those things because that's actually going to be very telling to whether or not that kind of content is worth doing more of. The things that get the higher engagement are obviously the things that you want to spend a lot of time of. And so industry standard, it varies by channel, but like Instagram, for example, is around 3%. Engagement. So it's actually really low. It's not like you should be expecting 100% of your community to be engaging with your content every day. It's just not going to happen. But you should set goals for yourself and understand what content is performing well and use that to your advantage. Go all the way. That's really just have fun with it. Social media is so experimental, and if something doesn't stick or it doesn't respond well, you can delete it. Being social at the core, super important. It's kind of like if you think about someone who maybe is hired to do business development for your company, but is like very antisocial and doesn't like to network, probably not the best fit for that job. Maybe is, who knows? But you definitely want to think about that whether it's you or someone else from your team, whoever that person is that's touching your social media and creating your content, you definitely want them to be social at the core. Someone who's excited to have conversations with people they don't know online and excited to try out a bunch of things and excited to understand why things work and why they don't. Super, super important. Don't post and pray. That comes back to the insights. So naturally, we're always going to try new things and post something and kind of have that moment where you're like, oh, is it going to work? Is anyone going to like it? There's going to be some degree of that, but for the most part, it's really important to really kind of plan out your content and understand why you're posting what, and expect a certain kind of response from it. Be a storyteller. I'm big on this. Being a storyteller, sometimes is as simple as just kind of thinking about like, who is the person behind my brand? If you're, let's just say, a company that makes handmade products, and you really love that your consumer or customer connection with your brand is that you're small and that you're the one doing it, your kind of narrative behind your brand might be very it might be you. It might be that your brand voice is very like, this is me doing this in my workshop. That's a very great strategy for a lot of brands. Consumers like to connect with that. Your strategy might be very different. You might be a 1 or 2 man shop, but you want to give the appearance that you're much bigger. You can totally do that with social media. You can be as big as you want. It's not like you're, blowing smoke and mirrors. It's just really about positioning your brand in the right way and telling the story that you want to tell. And then expect results. So again, you want to get some result, you're going to get some result from something. But really, like, if you're investing time to think about your content and you're investing time into social media as a great brand channel for your company, really understand what kind of results you want from it, and hold yourself to those things. So when we're creating a content strategy for any brand, there's a few kind of key pieces that we follow. One of the first things is to create a content framework. This is typically like pretty high level content categories. Some that might come really obvious, like product could be an example. Product would be a content category that has so many different ways that you could show or tell that narrative on your social, because many of you are creating products. But another category could be profiles. Profiles might take a little bit more thought and planning, because what they are setting out to do is interview interesting people or take a photo of them in their workspace, or maybe it's you connecting with some of your customers and profiling them on your social. People love people, so that's always a really great kind of category for most brands to take part in. Quotes could be another content category. You guys kind of get the gist. They're just kind of generalized things, and dependent on your brand, you could probably come up with some stuff that's really cool and a little bit more, strategic than the ones I spouted out. But those categories allow you to then, from there start to flesh through all of the slightly more tactical content that you can come up with under each of those. So I would typically recommend anywhere between 4 and 6 categories so that you can kind of start to build out your framework. And ensure that basically every single day in a week, you're not talking about the same thing. Original content is best. It's not the easiest, but it can take sometimes a lot of planning to create original content, and sometimes it can be, as simple as aggregating, a great quote or a great image or something that you find on the internet, as long as you credit your sources, and kind of give it your touch. Whether that's like a small graphic element or changing that quote into your font. Those things then become a lot more original, and people can't find it anywhere else, so it's great value. Making your post shareable. Not all of your posts are going to be shareable, but it is important, I think, on any given week to look at your content strategy and your content calendar and think about what could be shareable, and use that to your advantage with potentially growing your community. Again, quotes sound obvious, but they are a very shareable asset, or something kind of inspirational, maybe something, like a mood board or something that you have working on for your next season or something. People like to share that kind of content. And then creating a monthly calendar that you can stick to. So I'll show you. You won't be able to see most of that, I'm sure. But this is an example of a content calendar that we create for the communities that we manage and the brands that we work with. You can see here, it's basically like a month at a glance, right? So it's just a spreadsheet. We have our month at a glance, which allows us to plug in any kind of key moments that we know are happening in that month. Father's Day, it's Pride, it's 4th of July, like anything that or National Donut Day. Like, it might not make sense for your brand, but it's good to know that those moments are there. And then you can start to slot in things that might be more specific to you, like, new collection launching or opening up in Urban Outfitters or whatever it might be. It's just kind of good to have those things kind of nailed down from a monthly basis so that you have at least that mapped out. You can kind of, I don't know if you guys can even read it. I can't even read it from here, but in the bottom left-hand corner is, well, where, like, if we're working with a brand, like that's where they'll kind of share with us what key moments we want to capitalize on, or kind of key, like, you know, brand moments to make sure to integrate into the calendar. So whatever process works for you. And then what we'll do is break it out week by week. So this is an example of 1 week, technically like 3 days there. But it's really good for planning's sake to make sure that you're creating enough content to get you through at least a post a day or 2 posts, depending on your frequency of content that you want to hit. Doing it like this is a really awesome way to make sure that you're on top of things, both from like creating content to knowing that all of your posts are written out to ensuring that you've found all the appropriate handles, hashtags, all that stuff. You can see that it's broken out by channel. If you can, and when you get to that point, it's really important to try to post different content on different channels, even in the same day. But you really have to be able to have enough content to do that. And, you know, it's okay to start with like the same piece of content on each channel. So we'll have it like really just kind of mapped out so we can see, and then it allows you to schedule and alleviate that kind of publishing stage of social media to make sure that you're getting what you want to get out there, and then you can really focus on growth and engagement. I should say too, this is also a really great way if you do have an intern or maybe someone more junior on your team who you're kind of handing over these responsibilities to, like the way that your brand is positioned through social media and what's being posted really does matter. And it's important that you know what's going up. This is a great way to kind of hand it over to someone who you need that added support from. The time it takes to sit down and write a bunch of stuff can sometimes be the time you don't have, and that's why you don't end up posting for 2 weeks or something like that. So this is a great way to make sure that that doesn't happen. And you can have someone do it for you, you can proof it, edit it. It's like a great kickstart. Another good thing to do is to think about your grid at a glance and really look at what your content looks and feels like when it's sat all together. This is really as simple as kind of like screenshotting or kind of playing around with different images, whether you're using your own original photos or you're designing them or you're, you know, using stock photography sites, which is totally okay too. It really helps to see what it looks like when it flows together, and it is important, especially when you have Instagram as such a social media darling right now. It's where a lot of people are going to connect with brands, especially in the fashion space. So you want to make a really good first impression, and your grid is where it is. Sorry. Okay, so I talked about the 80-20 rule. So the idea is that 80% of your content is tied to the lifestyle, you know, the community, the kind of all the fun things about your brand, and then 20% is actually about your brand, being like a product, you know, shot or something from your lookbook or something like that. You also, ideally, should set a goal of having 80% of your content be original and things that you really thought of, and 20% to be aggregated. So aggregated content can be sharing a photo from someone else, maybe a customer shared a photo of your product, or regramming something from an influencer or a blogger, retailer, whatever it might be. It's really just kind of maybe you're sharing on Facebook like a article from WWD or something like that that pertains to something you do in sustainability or whatever. That's aggregated content. It's really easy to source. It usually kind of comes to you in a lot of ways. And so that should, you know, kind of be able to support and eat up probably 20% of your posts in any given month. You also want to spend 80% of your time on 20% of your content. So if you think about, I'm going to show you an example. This is a platform called MAP. The founder actually spoke at the last swim lessons, Puno. She's really, really awesome. You guys should check out MAP. Something that they do, and granted, they're a community-driven platform that is all about people sharing photos, so I know we all don't have that luxury, but for them, their aggregated content comes in the form of people sharing photos of places that they are. Their way of kind of putting a unique touch to them to make them original is to add the latitude, longitude to those images before they post them. Of course, they're still crediting the original source of the photo and who took it. Becomes great exposure for that person too, but that's really easy content for them. Then they do city guides. So city guides take time to plan. 80% of your time, 20% of your content. Doing a city guide, you can't really try to take maybe more than 2 of those on in a month. If they're doing something in Amsterdam, for example, they need to find that person in Amsterdam. They need to have them commit to posting X amount of photos in that day or over the course of that week or whatever it might be. There has to be kind of a strategy and a game plan to it. Those things take more time. You plan for them. You want to promote them before they go live, all that kind of stuff. But that's the really valuable content that's going to keep people coming back. I'll show another example of 80%, 20%. Juice Served Here, a local juice brand here in Los Angeles. We knew that Pride Week was coming up, so we thought that what we should do is tap into the creative set in the LGBT community in LA and do profile features, bring them in the store, get some great photos of them drinking the juice, do a Q&A with them, and then as part of our multi-channel approach, that content would live on the blog, we would push it out through email marketing, and we would push it out via social while also doing an in-store promotion that tied to it. That took time to plan. It's not rocket science. You guys see this kind of stuff all the time, but it took time to outreach to those creatives, get them on board, get the photographer, schedule the shoot, do the shoot, get the photos back, edit them, plug them in, create the blog post, create the email blast. You get the gist. But it's really, like, we got such great engagement on this. Like, it was amazing. So that's 80-20. So the things that you really want to think about: are you oversharing, certain content? Are you only posting about your product? Are you really creating value for the community? Like, it's gonna seem valuable to you because it's your brand or it's a company that you work for, but really think about what you're actually contributing. And a lot of what we're contributing from a content perspective at this point is inspirational photos that like evoke some sort of, emotion or sensation to double tap or whatever it might be. So it's really, it's not so hard. It's just really thinking about how it's being done. And then is it easy to understand? I see a lot of, content, sometimes it's a little confusing, or people that are doing giveaways or some sort of campaigns on social, and sometimes it's just like a lot of hoops to jump through. You just want like your content to be really easy to digest. And if you are doing a campaign, make the steps super simple, have an end goal in mind, and let it be easy for people to engage. So I'll tell you a little bit about our process for creating content, and it's not necessarily what everyone can do, but we started really small and have worked our way kind of up. But when I first started Matte Black, it was right when Instagram was kind of starting to take shape. Before that, it was like only Facebook and Twitter, and the marketing strategy, still now to this day, on those platforms is very different. It's still very marketing. So when Instagram came around, it was really like, shit, like this has to feel real. Like it has to feel like it's happening in the moment, and people are really hungry for that kind of behind the scenes or super inspirational content that you weren't, like none of us as social marketers were really doing before with Facebook. So what we did originally is we basically brought on a photographer who was just a young photographer, really, really inexpensive, but great and talented. And we would just say, come in every Thursday for like 2 hours. So it was like hardly paying him anything. And we were just like, we'll shoot, like with 4 of our different clients or something, we'll just shoot a bunch of product and we'll create stuff. That really set a tone for the evolution of our company and the evolution of how people are doing social media in general, not because of us, just in general. But sometimes it takes like a small little bit of your budget and just putting aside the time to force yourself to be like, okay, I'm gonna think about some creative ways to stage my content, and I'm gonna go to Joann's and buy some props and do some cool stuff, even if I don't know how to do this stuff. I mean, most of you guys probably have a great eye because you're in fashion, so it's a non-issue, but having just some fun with it and really making sure you're setting the time to create it. For us, it's now evolved so much bigger. We have our own production studio. We're creating high-level content with Instagram videos and all sorts of different stuff. But we started really, really small. And the reality is if you guys have an iPhone or an Android, you can probably take a lot of these photos yourself and edit them, and they'll look pretty dope. And you can buy really inexpensive little, almost like faux little studios. Like if you're an accessory company or something, it could be so easy to just play with different paper backdrop colors and props and stuff like that. So that's just these are some examples of stuff that we've done. It's also great to obviously engage your fans. Like you probably hear that time and time again, but encourage them to create content for you. I know it takes time because you need to build a community, and if you have a small community, you're talking to a small audience, but if you are consistent about it, it can really take shape. This is an example of a women's wear brand called Rebecca Minkoff, who years ago started just kind of like I guess like a content series where they would just ask their community to share their Rebecca Minkoff product and use the hashtag MyRM. Probably started initially as a contest or something, like maybe you got to win a product, but it has since evolved to like this massive community of like hundreds of thousands of photos of people just sharing it because they want to be a part of that conversation. Sure, we're not all going to get that, but it's definitely something to kind of strive for, especially when you're a product-based company. It's so easy for people to take photos. In the same vein, you can also work with other creatives to create content for you. Something that we're doing a lot with influencers. I mean, one of the most exciting things about the influencer space in general right now is the fact that there are so many people out there who have, well, even if they have like 5,000 followers, but they create really beautiful content, that is a potential asset for you. If they have 50,000 followers, it might be even more so, because if they post something on their channel, you're getting amplified to their audience, you might get a bunch of followers, whatever it might be. But what we do a lot is with our clients who have product, which most of you guys do, you can find people who take really beautiful photos that you think are in line with your brand, and it's so simple to reach out to them and to offer to send them stuff, and in exchange, just ask for 4 photos back. There's some people out there with really big followings who I'll tell you will do that for us, and they might charge us like $100. That content is so good and so valuable and really helpful when you don't have the time to create things on your own. Plus, 99.9% of the time they end up posting something on their channel anyway. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1. But again, like there's just so many cool people out there right now, regardless of their audience size, who would love the opportunity to get some product in exchange for just sending you photos and not necessarily having to post anything, even though they pretty likely will. Going back to content creating a narrative, this is something else that's kind of lofty, but it does catch on and is kind of like the beauty of social media. But thinking about you using a hashtag and associating it with your brand and letting that kind of take its own form for you. This is an example using MAP. Again, they started the hashtag Find It Live It when they had a pretty small community and they were really consistent about it. Has nothing, it doesn't say MAP in it. It doesn't say tag MAP or anything like that. It's just purely a conversation. At the time of this screen grab, they had over 90,000 people who had ended up submitting photos using Find It Live It because it became such a conversation of its own. Much like if you guys read Darling magazine, they have their hashtag That's Darling. More clear of a linear tie there, but there's so many people that use that hashtag who are not talking about Darling magazine. Again, we can't all, this isn't like a huge strategy for every brand, but I think it does just kind of show the power of just creating great conversations and narratives and also being really consistent with it. Nothing's gonna happen overnight. your community is going to take time to grow. And if you do want to create narratives like this, it's going to take time, but it could totally take off. These are just some great kind of resource sites that I always recommend for different reasons, just to like really keep in the know with social media and understanding content and kind of anything that you could need. Buffer especially has a free daily newsletter that I think has so much great insight. It's not pretty looking, but it has really, really good stuff for anyone who's trying to kill it at the social media game. As like a small piece of shameless self-promotion, we do have an online video course for social media, and it covers some of what you guys just got today, but a lot more. How to grow communities, successful tactics of a community manager, understanding analytics, how to use paid advertising, how to develop your strategy, has lots of worksheets, all sorts of stuff. So if you guys really do feel kind of baffled by social media at times, and I can totally get why that would be, this is just one of so many great resources out there for that kind of information. And that's my content spiel. Okay, thanks you guys.